This is story time with Sean. I'm making this up.
Okay.
But in this imaginary story, Haynes was going to buy Bombas, and they got down to the night before it was supposed to be done. Paperwork was about to be signed. LOIs were signed. They pulled out and paid a penalty fee because it would have made their earnings per share go down by 1 penny. So they lost out buying a generational brand because of an earnings per share decision. That's story time. I'm not going to tell you if that happened or not happened.
It all started with a rumor, a whisper about a private WhatsApp chat where 9-figured entrepreneurs swapped insights, information, and deals behind closed doors. At first, I was skeptical. How could such a group exist without anyone knowing about it? But as the whispers grew louder, my curiosity grew too. And now, for the first time ever, these operators are pulling back the curtain on their clandestine world, right here on this podcast. You're about to witness something truly remarkable. So sit back, relax, and stay glued to your headphones. The chat is about to begin.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Operators Podcast. No Mike this week, but you got me, Sean, the world's greatest Jason Calacanis impersonator. We got Matt. We got Jason. We're just talking through whatever comes to mind. No show notes, just the classic way we like to do it. So how's everybody been?
Well, Matt
How's
has so
week?
many motivational tweets, so he can go all day.
I can go all day. Dude, okay, so everybody's like, how do you write? So I write it every day at 5 a.m. It's like the first thing I do is I get up and I read and I write.
Matt
it's
just calls up his ghostwriter at 5 a.m. and is like, get to work.
Oh, could you imagine? I'd be the most annoying person in the world if I did that. So do you guys want to, Jason, I liked your text this week on like strategy and how you think about it. So I guess like there's a few things I'd love to just like hear from you guys today. Like the first is like, how do you spend your time? How do you think about strategy? Like, what are you guys focused on for 2023? I know you both have a ton of thoughts there. I would like to hear about like your roles specifically. So like, how do you divide your time and attention? And then I got like I was thinking about this before the thing because Sean and I saw you guys comment on the Allbirds thing and like the IPO. I actually want to dig in. I've got a question for you both that we can maybe leave to the end because I think it might be a good one. I actually want to know what you guys both think about like, should consumer brands even be public? Period. Right.
Well,
so
guys,
like let that one noodle. But like I want to dig into that because Sean, I know you got an opinion on that.
Yeah, I can tell
Sean's
this is going to be a great
opinion.
episode. I can see why people subscribe to the Operators Podcast because it's just nothing but fire, guys. So let's jump into it.
So maybe Jason, why don't we start with you, man? Like strategy at HexClad. How like when you went into 2023, what were the top priorities you guys came out with? And I really want to know how you landed on them, like what the process was like.
Yeah. You know, we have like 4 or 5 key strategic initiatives that we're working on this year, but they just rise to the top. You know, it's like we're not super process oriented. We just kind of know, like just based on the life cycle, you know, where we are as a business. You know, we grew so much last year. And it's like, I remember last September, you know, we all woke up and we were like, hey, guess what? We're out of warehouse space. Now it's like, what? Like we're out of space. And we've done our own fulfillment for historical reasons with our roadshow and stuff. I was like, we knew earlier in the year that we needed to get a 3PL up and running and we worked on it, but it was just like, it just all happened so fast and everything takes time. So going into this year, we realized that we need to scale our ops to be $1 billion company. Like to sell $1 billion worth of product in the next few years, we fully intend to get there. So, you know, everyone loves talking about marketing, which is the fun part of the job, but scaling the ops is a big one for us. And I shared that little study that we hired a big consulting firm to just help us think through it. And, you know, super helpful. Our lease is up in LA in 2 years. So like, I think a lot of times the calendar and just how you're doing as a business dictates a lot of your strategic priorities, but a more fun one is content creation. And that's a big strategic priority for us. Like, we hired an amazing head of content. He's a person that comes from like the culinary world, worked at Condé Nast, and did a bunch of stuff with like big magazines and created YouTube channels for them. And like, cooking is the most communityable thing there is. Like, everybody talks about, oh, I want to do community. Oh, I want to do content. It's theoretically easier for us, right?
Yeah,
because
it's food, right?
it's just the space for it.
And like, I mean, the proof is that there's an entire TV channel dedicated to cooking. And last time I checked,
Yeah.
there's not a Wallet TV channel. So I think
There
you're
is not.
You're in a better space, Jason.
You should start that, John. So
Yeah,
Jason,
So it makes sense, right, for us to focus on that at this point. We literally didn't have time to do it before. It's like, there's only so many strategic priorities we can tackle. We had like a lot of initiatives in 2022. They actually went pretty well, and so now those are two big ones for us. I've got a few others, but
so can I I want to follow up on this and Sean, I want to get your thoughts. But like, to me, I guess strategy, the way I think of it, is like, you're either exploring the edges and trying to advance, or you're optimizing the core, right? Like, you're building up ops and defense, and because like, I think Sean, you hit on it last time. Like, when you grow, things break, right? Like, every time you double people, process, or capital, something is breaking always. And Jason and Sean, like, when you guys are working with your teams, how, like, are you guys like always hard charging? Like, is the default mode like, nah, fuck it, let's grow and let's push? Or do you think that you guys are more like, what's broken? What do we have to work on? Jason, to your point, like, it's obvious what we need to work on, right? There's no process here. It's just obvious. Like, where do you fall in there?
So at Ridge right now, it's become sort of a meme. I just keep talking about infrastructure. I'm like, guys, we're building infrastructure this year. And the tagline is infrastructure to achieve excellence. And in every meeting, I have somebody say that tagline. And it's cringy, but it's like, that's exactly what we're doing, right? We call it land expansion. I use Vegas as an example. I'm like, Vegas is a city in the fucking desert. It does not belong there. It was built in the 50s. You know what they did? The first thing you do is you build a freeway. Then you bring in people to lay down pipes. You get water there. You get electricity there. It's land expansion. We're building new territories. So that's what we're doing this year at Ridge. And shout out Jason to talk about ops. Nobody ever wants to fucking talk about ops. It's like it's always like this landing page, this email thing. It's like, that doesn't get to exist unless there's a guy making $15 an hour in a warehouse putting a label on your thing. So shout out to all the ops professionals, man. That's like the hardest job there is. And it's like, we get to sit here on our computers and like, there's somebody right now in the Midwest driving a forklift to fucking ship Ridge wallets. So shout out those people.
Yeah. And our office is actually right in the middle of the warehouse. It's just the way the space is.
Oh, I love that.
So, I mean,
really?
I see forklifts going all day long. Like, I can go over and talk to our warehouse manager. Danny and I, like, labeling boxes at the end of November every year. It's like been 3 years in a row that Danny and I spent nights in the warehouse. The team probably is like, get out of here. You're messing stuff up. But it's like, just showing that, we're with them.
There's also an element of like, you guys, I love that your office is in the middle of your warehouse. That is actually like, that's brilliant. I guess there's probably an element to that, Jason, where you probably have a more intimate knowledge of some of that back end stuff than most people do who like completely outsource it, right? Like, they don't actually see what it's like to like pick, pack, ship, process and order front to back. Whereas like you're digging in there in your average, November, just because things are probably breaking. I bet you there's like a lot of unspoken, like intrinsic, intuitive things that you guys get just from that proximity to the product.
Well, it's interesting too, because we've been thinking about the future and what does that mean in terms of fulfillment and ops for us. And we hired a consulting firm to help us think about that. It's like, when you're really small, you should do your own fulfillment. And then when you're in the middle, you use a 3PL. And then you get big enough and they're like, you take it back.
Yep.
but there's no like really simple answers to any of this stuff. You've got to get into the numbers. You know, what does the pick and pack cost here? What about freight? Getting it LTL shipped where it needs to be. What about the last mile to the customer, getting in the right zones? There are a lot of different variables in the equation. And I think we probably are leaning more towards, okay, let's explore 3PLs for more than we do now. But partly it's because we're kind of out of space. And it's like, do we want to stand up our own DC, or do we just—
Is that a necessity at this point?
I had lunch with someone recently who's part of a big retail business, and they just historically have had their own DC. It's like in Indiana. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's interesting, because they have a ton of SKUs. They have their own DC. It's like, it's hard to decide, guys. I mean, Sean, you don't do your own fulfillment, right?
Right.
So you guys are all 3PL all the time.
Yeah, and everyone on this call is very blessed. We don't do apparel because if you do apparel, you do not have a choice. You do not get to use a 3PL. You could try; it's never worked. Right? All of us relatively low SKU counts. Right? I think Rich is maybe 100 SKUs or whatever. Right? Like, you know, maybe a couple hundred with rings now. And they're small and they're expensive. So let's say 3PLs make a ton of sense. They'll compete like hell for our volume. But I know the Uni guys, we're at the same 3PL as them. And Uni's a big ass fucking oven. And they can't get people to work on that account, because would you rather pick 1,000 Ridge Wallet orders or 100 stoves up? It's like, the world of ops sucks, man.
And our boxes are big too. You know, you buy a 13-piece set, it's like 40 pounds. So it's tough. The Lomi's big, right?
We run our own. We do our own warehouse and 3PL for Lomi. Pila Case, we are similar to apparel, right? So like we do our own manufacturing and our own fulfillment. We actually manufacture that product right here in BC, and it's all print on demand. And you have to, like, when you have thousands of SKUs, to Sean, to your point, like, we can't make that work third party. It just, like, the margin stack will never shake out. It's just like inventory. Can't do it.
And you see talk on Twitter being like, hey, did my 3PL fuck this up, or is this some weird error? It's like, no, it's always the 3PL, because it's a hard fucking business. It's like,
yeah, man, it's so difficult to do.
I think it's a good segue into, you're talking about land expansion. One thing we're doing this year is wholesale, right? Like everyone's pivoting into wholesale. To tie it even to the first point of the call, the big public companies, Solo Stove is like, that's where we're growing. We're growing wholesale this year. Getting a 3PL to do wholesale orders, it's like, dude, you might as well cut your fucking hands off. It's horrible. So anyway.
Yeah. Sean, I will say, like, I bet you, and Jason, I don't know shit about your operations. I suspect that you guys run a really, really tight fulfillment op because of the roadshow discipline that you've had to build over the years, like bringing product out, like sending it out, bringing it back in, moving it around. Like, you as a logistics operation is probably very, number one, you don't talk about it, right? This is like, you're not a very public dude. But I bet you, like, we should just do a whole thing on that. Jason, next time I'm in LA, I want to see it too. Like, the nerd in me really wants to see that thing go. Sean, do you ever think you will run some of your own fulfillment as Ridge? Like, because you guys been adding products too. Like, your categories are expanding.
Yeah. So Jason said it best, right? When you're very small, you do your fulfillment. When you're very big, you do. I'll have to think about it, but I don't think any billion-dollar websites do 3PLs. I think they have to bring their own fulfillment in-house, right? Yeti, Solo Stove, they're all doing it in-house. And it's just because the requirements get so strict when you're working with big retailers, right? Like, Solo Stove just got into Costco. They could only do that because they're doing their own warehouses. There is no 3PL who does Costco correctly, right?
Yeah.
Because they just can't care enough. So I think eventually we will do it. You're totally right. Like, we're launching 2 new categories this year. I would like to wait as long as possible because we have 4 warehouses in the US, one in Canada, one in the UK, one in the EU, one in Australia. I would love to push it off as long as possible. So a couple of years before I got to start managing a warehouse staff.
Do you guys think this is a theme for this year? So like one of the things I wrote down for us to chat about is just like state of industry stuff. And it does seem like for us, Sean, I call this our get shit together year, right? Like, we grew so damn fast. Like we 4x'd our business last year and we stood up Lomi, and it's like, man, we need to make the product better. We need to make our ops better. Everything just needs to get better now. This seems to be a theme. You guys both talk to a lot of brands. Is this common right now? It's like everybody's taking a breath and saying, what the hell do we need this thing to look like operationally? Because like you had 2 COVID years, which were bananas, right? From a demand gen and capture perspective. Is this pretty common? Like from what you guys are seeing in the industry?
Yeah. And a lot of it's by default because growth's a lot harder. There's only a quarter of brands that are growing year over year. I feel pretty strongly about that number, about 25%.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's about 25% that are like on death's door, kind of like they need funding or they need something to happen. And we all get DMs about those brands. And then there's 50% of brands that are kind of in the middle, maybe up a point, maybe down a couple points, whatever. And they're like, okay, we can't make sales grow right now. We might as well make this business better. So I think a lot of people are in that by default. So I do think it's a rebuilding year across the board. If you made it through COVID, if you have cash in the bank, it's like, how do we make this business function? Like really, I mean, to Jason's point, right? Like watch the numbers and really function. Jason, on this like ops thing, do you guys view the work in this unsexy stuff as a growth enabler, or do you view it as a growth driver?
Man, that's a tough one. Again, it's just like playing the hand that you're dealt is the way I look at it. We think we can be so much better at so many things. Last November was really, really hard in our warehouse, partly because we budgeted a sales number, which was, even if we were to hit that number, it was going to be hard. And we wound up selling almost 2.5x our budget in November. And it was like,
I remember that.
We stopped everything. Like we stopped budgeting. We stopped even caring about how much we were spending on ads. It was just like, we just like kind of blew through everything. And that was a real wake up call for us because, we almost couldn't handle it. And we got it done. Like I said, Danny and me in the warehouse and like trying to go into Home Depot and trying to find people to come to our warehouse and work and all the things that we've done. We've learned that we need to plan better, and it's definitely making us better. Like all those hardships make you better. And so the list of strategic priorities, they may not sound super strategic, but I would say being able to 3x your ops is a strategic priority, although it's not a sexy one.
I think that's a good delineation. Like, yeah, I mean, look, strategy isn't 99% of strategy, in my opinion, is not sexy, right? Tactics can be sexy. The strategy is usually like pretty boring stuff when you dig into it, folks. Like Sean, I want to ask you, like, how much of what you guys do at Ridge is very proactive versus like more reactive? We're just, we need to figure this shit out.
Yeah. I think those things go hand in hand, where you do something proactive and then it leads to a ton of reactions. I was kind of giggling because you were talking about like, this side of the business being very unsexy and tying that to what a CEO does. I just had a whole call with my leadership team and I was like, hey, I want to let you know that my job is very negative. Like my job as the CEO is to have very hard conversations all the time. And everyone else here should be incredibly positive and happy that I take those conversations. I've threatened to sue 4 people this week and we're recording this on a Wednesday. It's like, I had a call with a guy and I'm like, my goal is to bankrupt you. What do you want to do about it? And it's like that's unfun stuff. And like, that's my job. So, to answer like, is it proactive or reactive? I said like, we have 12 proactive goals this year. Cool, fun, exciting, awesome things we're going to do. And each one of those leads to about 100 problems that pop up.
Yeah.
Right. So, one of the things is influencer wallets, right? We did a launch with Chael Sonnen. He's like a MMA fighter, big fan of the brand. We have another one coming up, and we're like, yeah, we want to do 6 of those, like every single once every 2 months we want to do one of these. But it's like, we've never done one before, so who approves it? Like, how do you pay them? How do you pick the charity that's tied to it? It's like a bunch of shit like that. So,
yeah. Sean, you said something, and dude, you're going to forgive me. I can't remember when, because you like put out a ton of content, but I think at some point I saw an email or a tweet from you, and you said like the job of the CEO is to always be looking for the new floor in the business, right? Like, this is the baseline. Could you explain that? Because I think that goes hand in hand. Because Jason, I think you're actually hitting on that anyway. Right? It's like, what's the new floor? Like, what do we need to stand on to build the business from here forward?
Yeah. So it's actually ceiling expansion. Ceiling.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Ceiling.
Yeah. So Connor, his job is to find the ceiling, right? He's my CMO. His job is to figure out how high he can get current revenue with the tools he has, right? So he's in a room. He's got a table. He's got a ladder. He's got some pillows. He's trying to stack it up to touch that ceiling. And then my job is to fucking keep raising that ceiling, getting further and further away from his hands, right? So like, he's optimizing Facebook ads. He's figuring out, like, how can he optimize the current funnel? How can he optimize the current tools? How can he reach new markets with what we have? And then my job is to be like, we're launching rings. And he's like, I don't know anything about that. I'm like, trust me, it's going to be great. And then we just build a new, we added a whole new level to the business that he gets to go try to reach the top of that. So yeah, like,
you're throwing grenades over the wall, and he's catching them and juggling them and trying to make sure they don't blow up in everybody's faces.
Yeah, he has a way harder job, right? But it's it can be optimized, right? Like every day there's an optimal path for him, and he's trying to reach that optimal path. And then what we're doing, or really, like, as CEOs, the only people that can actually do this in their business as a CEO is find whatever the next thing is going to be, because you're the only person who can execute the vision. Like, your product team can't do it, or your marketing team can't. Like, it has to come from you only. You have to build that ceiling.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, Jason, it sounds like the mode that HexClad is in, and it makes so much sense. Like, just knowing the growth that you guys have gone through and still experiencing, that's the freaking crazy part. Is like, you guys are building out infrastructure. Like, you're literally standing up the fucking walls in the building. Like, oh my God, the building's getting bigger. It's like, we need more walls. Like, we need more doors, like, somebody get another forklift. Go to Home Depot and poach people. Like, you guys are like, you're, and it makes sense to me that the priority for you is like, how do we support this? Right. And I think where I was getting at with the question of like enable versus support, like, I believe that the work you guys are doing now is actually probably more of a growth driver, right? Like, you're going to keep customers happier, right? And happy customers keep buying. Like, if you don't do all this unsexy shit, like it shows up in retention. Right? Like, it's actually going to make your marketing team's job harder.
Oh, dude, warranty. I mean,
yeah. Good. Great point.
Yeah. A lot of people run ads and they're like, it'll be like Ridge versus whatever, some knockoff, some competitor. And like, they run that as a Facebook ad. And if you ever see the comment, it's a bunch of people who have a Ridge wallet being like, no, Ridge wallet's awesome. I broke mine. They gave me a new one. Right. And it's like, oh yeah, taking care of a customer is the quickest way to build a little army, right? Like, we process probably 500 warranties a week. So it's 500 people. If everyone's listening, they have a Ridge wallet. Yeah. They don't break very much, but it's,
500 a week's nothing compared to what,
knowing the size of his company, that's peanuts. That's incredible.
Yeah. And everything's covered. So if people email in, we'll take care of them in some way or another. Right. And when you take care of those 500 people, every single one of them sees our ad still. They're in social media. They're like, they're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, those people are nice to me, right? Being nice to somebody is the quickest way to get them to like you. I mean, we all know that from middle school or elementary school, trying to make friends. Just being the nice kid, you get a lot more friends.
Dude, the bar's pretty low though. When you're building a brand, the bar's real low. So, how much time? This is for both of you. Like, how much of a given week is going into like fighting the shit, Sean? Like, how much time are you spending in what you feel is like a combative state? So I feel like you're always suing or pissing, like you're punching someone. And then Jason, I'm curious how you view it too.
Yeah. Jason, I'd love to hear, how much time in a week do you spend in a battle? Like a battle to the death? How much of your week is that?
It's too much. It's definitely too much. It's like, the funny thing is, and then Danny and I talk about this all the time. By the way, Danny's the CEO. I'm the president. We work incredibly well together.
That's awesome.
We're so close. I know, Matt, you have a good partner who you work with in leading the business, man. And I'm very lucky to have that. But I do maybe a little more day-to-day stuff. Danny's very strategic, and he just knows the cookware space and the market. We kind of make all the decisions together, and it's like, that's incredibly valuable. But one of the things that we talk about now is like, we just got to say no more. Like, just even in a negotiation, like the first thing to realize is like, do we even need to do this? We don't. So why don't we just say, if we don't like their price, we can just say no. And like, when you say no to people, it's like, I always say this first rule of negotiation is be prepared to walk away from the table, 100%. But it really works. But the nice thing is, we don't have to do any of this stuff now. Like, we've reached a point where there's no single thing that we must do. It's like when Sean and I were talking 6 months ago about influencer, and he hit the nail on the head. It's like, no single influencer deal is going to like mean anything to you. Our deal with Gordon is very special, but he's like the Michael Jordan of cooking. But when I look at all these other influencer deals, and I see a great influencer and I really like them, and we kind of talk to them, and they just want some silly amount of money proposed. It's like, you guys don't get it, and we don't need to do it. So it's like that all across the board. It's actually the worst part of the job, right, Sean? It's like constantly having to make these decisions, like, oh, I got to cut this vendor, and now this guy's asking for this amount of money, this person needs this, and it's the least fun part of the job, but it has to get done. So when Sean says he gets to be the bad guy, and therefore everybody, he saves everyone from that. That's such a great way of describing it. Now, Sean seems to like it. I hate it.
Yeah. Well, some people are really like, they're built to remove friction from people's lives. Like, that's what Sean's doing, right? Is he's saying to his team, like, listen, I'm going to be I don't know football, but I'm going to be the big dude out front who's just going to like clear a path. Right? Like, if Sean wasn't doing the work, there's no path.
Yeah. I want to make a quick joke. All three of us have partners in our business, and the fact that we're the face of this podcast, like we're the ones in front of the camera, they must be some ugly motherfuckers that like we're the best looking guys.
I don't think my partner is. He's like, he's great, man. He's presentable. I'll put him on TV.
Yeah. I'm just joking. But
he definitely doesn't like this shit though. Like, he's definitely that guy. He's like, just leave me alone. Right.
Sean, you met Danny. He's a handsome devil.
Yeah. And so I guess Connor's the ugly one. But
poor Connor.
No, you're totally right. Like, removing friction. I consider it like, there's a study I saw one time that like monkeys have an inherent idea of fairness, where if you have two monkeys, right, and you keep giving one of them grapes and you don't give the other monkey any grapes, like the other monkey like will kill you. Like, it'll get out of the cage and try to rip your face off, right? And I think I have that, where like when I'm in a negotiation and something isn't fair, like yesterday I sent an all caps message to Chase, basically, if you will not do this to me, I will move all of my fucking money out of your bank. And I'm the only person in the company who can do that, because what's anybody going to do to me? You know, like, I don't give a fuck about this person at Chase. Like, I was like, I will get you fired over this. Obviously, I'm a drama queen and I'm very angry about stuff. But they did exactly what I wanted them to do. I got the thing done.
Say, you seem to be effective though. So I guess like your style is working, dude. Like I wouldn't change anything about it.
Yeah, it's just that bloodlust that you just want to like rip somebody up if they're not being fair. So, you know, I spend
But Sean
probably
has this certain level of like, I'm doing it. I don't give a fuck. Like, I know I'm right, and I don't care. Like, I don't care about people's feelings. Like, facts don't care about your feelings, and I don't have to answer to anyone about that. So when you're a company like the Ridge that is so just done so well, is profitable, doesn't have investors, you know, he has a couple of people, other shareholders who he has to discuss things with, but at the end of the day, like, he's got the ability to make those decisions and not worry. That's like a special spot to be in, and that's why it's just like Sean is one of the 4 people who I have notifications on Twitter, because I'm just like, I actually really envy that. That aspect,
I was going to
because I
say
think
that
it really works for you.
Yeah, Sean, I will say, like, you know, you actually, both of you guys are like this. There's an almost like there's an approach that you both have, which is just around like jobs to be done. Right? These are the jobs that need to be done. How do I get them done? How do I get them done fast, cost effectively? Like, you both just have this like drive element. You know, Jason, I want to go back to something you said, because I think it's really important for people listening. I just came out of quarterly planning with my Lomi team. And the thing I said going into it, and I say this probably like once a year with planning, is I want to leave today, if it's a day or 2 days, I want to be really proud of everything we said no to. Right? Like, that's the thing that, like, at the end of this, I want a big list of all the shit we didn't do. And that's the thing that, like, at the end of the year, we're going to be like, we're going to celebrate what we didn't do this year. Because how many companies die from indigestion?
There are so many, you know, it's also, if we swing over to marketing for a minute, you know, everyone wants to talk about all the growth hacks, you know. Oh, you need 75 landing pages and you know, the CRO and all the things, and you know, all those things are important, but every business is different, right? So it's like, what applies to you or what applies to Sean may not apply to us at HexClad, and you got to have the judgment, like the good judgment, to say, okay, this is really cool for them, not for us. And like, that ability to say no to things, I think is just, it's something that's, you know, when you're a smaller company, you're kind of just like, you're desperately trying to learn and find what are the things that are really going to take you to the next level. But there's so much noise out there. You really got to ask yourself, like, why does this apply to me? Like, I have my team looking at this right now. Landing pages versus PDP. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so much goes into creating these landing pages, and at the end of the day, like, it's fine. Like, we can afford to create 1,000 landing pages. Doesn't matter, but it's about the opportunity cost and the time spent on all those things that I think is key. And just everyone needs to realize that not everything applies to you, and I think you make much better decisions that way.
I agree. I think I like 100% agree. I do think that if you were to look, and this is going to tie into the sort of like the question I asked at the beginning, if you were to look at like all of the very successful consumer brands out there, this is going to apply to all business, but like, we're talking consumer here, right? Every single one of them had their own path up the mountain. Every single one. Like, you can't point to one and say, they ran the Yeti playbook. Like, no, they didn't. You know, like Lululemon and Yeti did not run the exact same playbook to the height that they're at right now. So I think you're hitting on a really important point, Jason, because like, you see this a lot in content, which is like, there's a lot of dogma, particularly in marketing, in consumer, that like, there's only one way to do things, you know, UGC or die. CRO or die. Like, got to have a landing page. 5 reasons why. Fucking pick one. There's just like you're laughing, like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, there is dogma around all this crap, and there isn't. I don't know of a single successful brand where it's like, oh man, you guys do the exact same thing as this guy.
All right, I got to get Sean's take on all this, though. We got to get Sean's take on all this.
Yeah. Oh, it's just so funny because, there's no playbook. No one at Kith knows how to run ads. So like, we're talking about Facebook, we're talking about landing pages or whatever. If you walk into Kith, they'll do 150 million this year, something like that. And you say, okay, what's your landing page? You'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? They're like, do you use builder.io? Yeah, they're going to be like, yeah, we just put people on the homepage. That's where the stuff is. So it's very funny. But like,
in 2020, HexClad didn't even have a shop now button on the site. I think prior to BFCM, I don't know. It was there and it somehow disappeared and no one knew about it. And it was like, wait a minute, how do I go buy? I have to like click on products to go buy. Like, and you know what? We grew, I don't know, 200+% in 2020 without a shop now button. So.
Yeah. So it's like, I often use the mountain analogy as well, Matt. We always talk about going up the mountain, right? And like our revenue target is that mountain. And it's like, bro, sometimes you walk downhill. You know what I mean? Like sometimes there's shade, sometimes it's scorched fucking earth. So yeah, we talk about the mountain thing. And yeah, dude, there's no playbook to be. I remember talking to some guy and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to be like Supreme. And I'm like, good fucking luck. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm trying to be like the most hyped, successful brand of the past 10 years. It's like, yeah, I can't help you, man. It's like, if I knew how to do that, I'd do that. Right. But it's like, look.
Yeah. You could stamp that. We all would.
Yeah.
Right? Like that would be great.
I trust Northbeam because I know the rigor of their analytics. Like they don't compromise. They don't cut corners. And having come from a finance background and being a numbers guy, I know that all models are wrong, but theirs is going to be the least wrong because of that level of rigor. It's like there's a trust when you're dealing with something with a model, the math behind it, the rigor. There's like a million shortcuts that can be taken. I know them for a long time, and that's why I trust that they're putting the level of analytics. It's like HexClad releasing a new product. We're just not going to do it unless it's great, unless it's innovative, unless it's special. And that's the approach over at Northbeam. So that's why we really, really trust the platform.
Hell yeah.
So I guess I want to get into this. Like, I don't know if you guys have anything else on the
I want to hear that IPO point, Matt.
Yeah.
I'm here for that. I want to hear that.
Listen, man, I want to dig into that. So like, if we're good to dig into that, let's switch to that. Cause, Sean, I think like the thing I miss right now from your Twitter feed is all of the like teardowns on consumer companies. Like there would be like a quarterly filing and I'm like, Sean would just come out with the like, here's what I see. And Jason, I know you got a ton of experience in this stuff.
But
so like,
I'm waiting for Sean's latest analyst reports. I haven't seen any in a while.
I know. I'm like, where's Sean the analyst?
He's
so like,
too busy. Ridge is crushing it with rain.
He's building an actual business. Do you guys believe that consumer brands should aspire to be public? Are they good publicly traded companies?
I used to do a lot of these analyst reports. I stopped doing them because one, other people started doing them. So I'm like, okay, have fun with it. Like, I don't really care about doing it anymore. And two, they just got really boring. It's like, it was exciting, like, breaking them down and figuring out what they're doing. But now it's just kind of sad. You know what I mean? Should
numbers going in the wrong direction. It's not as fun.
Yeah. Should consumer brands be public? I don't think people understand what being public is like. There's a reason why Elon took Twitter private, because when you're private, you can do things to actually change a business. If you're public, you can't change a business. Doing layoffs anything in any direction spooks Wall Street, right? Because who's buying that stock? Big pension funds, big fucking conglomerates, roll-ups, BlackRock, whatever. And they're like, they don't really pay that much attention to your business, right? Unless you're Apple or whatever, but they're like, hey, you said you would do X, you did X minus 1, that's bad. Or hey, you did X plus 2, that's even worse somehow. You don't know how to fucking project your business out, right? So if you need to make radical change to your business, and sometimes you have to, you can't do that while you're public. Now, the only consumer brands that should be public, I think, are roll-ups, right? If you consider Nike a roll-up, if you consider, Lululemon bought Mir, they're going towards there. But LVMH can be public because individual brands can be highlighted or have down years, right? Because it doesn't matter that much because the whole conglomerate moves in the right direction. So, James Purse, privately held, hundreds of millions of dollars, $40-50 million in profit every year. That should be the target for almost all consumer brands, unless you are an LVMH or a VF Corp, where you can always have a darling and you can always have something, because consumer is trends. Sometimes people buy shit, sometimes they don't. Stanley Cups are hot right now. Give it 2 years, they won't be, right?
Right. Jason, what's your take?
Yeah, I have a slightly different take. I think that an IPO is done for one of two reasons: to raise capital or to get liquidity. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It matters what kind of business you are and how your business is performing. Although I will agree with Sean that being public, it adds like a lot of other strain on the business, and being public and having to deal with the quarterly earnings cycle is actually difficult. I've seen it. I was a pretty senior guy at a New York Stock Exchange listed company, and I saw decisions that were being made for quarterly EPS, and it was like, that's not the right decision for the long term. But I do think being public is an avenue if you want to do one of those two things: raise capital or get liquidity. And it's one way to do it. The SPAC boom that has now gone, but was there, over the last 2 years, is most of those SPAC deals were potential M&A processes, which actually wound up being a SPAC. And sometimes they were better than an M&A deal, or sometimes they were better than just going public. I think, for me and for our business, when we talk about the ultimate conclusion, I said this, I think, in the last pod. First of all, build a business that you want to own forever. But at some point, it makes sense to do some kind of transaction for estate planning or whatever else for the owners, for portfolio diversification. And I think our feeling at HexClad is like, we love running the business, and so we don't want to give up control. And so an IPO is maybe a way to do that. It's all about what is the best cost of capital. And, we could do some kind of minority deal, or we can do some kind of leveraged recap, or we can do an IPO. And I think, all those things are on the table. But what happened with the Allbirds of the world and people like that is just, we just lived through a real bubble.
Yeah.
Like, this was a real bubble. And I kind of give all these guys credit for capitalizing on it, when they could, even though in hindsight, it's like the music stopped and a lot of these companies are without a chair. And they're without a chair because they didn't build great businesses with great unit economics. They kind of rode a wave, and that's just the way it played out.
Sean, I want to go back to this point you made, that like consumer businesses are trends, right? And your comment about like, sometimes, if you're ascending the mountain, you got to go down to go back up, and that like, that's just out of sync with the public markets, right? That's kind of actually why I asked the question, is like, do consumer brands make good public companies broadly? Like, I hear you, Jason. I just don't know if like raising capital is a good enough reason. It sounds like it comes with too much shit afterwards, unless you're out.
Let's separate all the players, right? Because Jason's talking about, as a business owner, getting liquidity event, IPOs make a lot of sense, raising capital, whatever. And then it's like, that's the correct decision for him or in that business if he chooses to do that. But then it's like, will a consumer brand deliver 7% annualized returns over time that would make a hedge fund happy to hold it. And TBD, right?
Right.
Jason brings up being at a large publicly traded company and then them making the wrong decision to protect earnings per share. This is an alleged story. I'm not going on the record with anything. This is just story time.
You kind of are. So like,
this is story time with Sean. I'm making this up.
Okay.
But in this imaginary story, Haynes was going to buy Bombas, and they got down to the night before it was supposed to be done. Paperwork was about to be signed. LOIs were signed. They pulled out and paid a penalty fee because it would have made their earnings per share go down by 1 penny. So they lost out buying a generational brand because of an earnings per share decision. That's story time. I'm not going to tell you if that happened or not happened, but and if we get sued, that's Finn's problem or Northbeam's problem. Thanks, Austin.
Shout out to Northbeam too, by the way.
Yes.
It is, you're not wrong. We should, like, they've been generous enough to sponsor the show, and we all use them too, which is hilarious. It's actually like the best kind of sponsor. It's like we all use them, which is great.
I live in the platform. I'm sure
too.
Connor and Sean live in the platform. Yeah. It's like, what do I, there's like a few things that I check every morning. Luckily, I don't have to be in it all day long like the media buyers do, because that's just, but I make so many decisions based on Northbeam. So shout out.
Totally.
Shout out.
Yeah. I told
Sean.
Sorry. I was going to say, I told Finn I wouldn't do an ad read, but I will. This is my official endorsement that I do use Northbeam. You can clip that out. Throw that as an ad. But Matt, you've been doing a great job. I want to hear your point of view, man. You brought up Allbirds. You're running this fucking awesome ship. What are you going to do?
I am hoping to not IPO. And for all of the reasons that you said, I think having the flexibility to sometimes like go down the mountain, right? Sometimes it's like you need to have I need to get my shit together year. And that's just like, look, we're doing a show called The Operators, and good operators do not make decisions based on a quarterly EPS target. That's a like symptom of things been done. And I think that the vast majority of consumer brands make terrible public companies because of that reason. I think that a Nike and a Lulu, and these are rare companies that are incredibly, in some cases, very diversified, to your point, Sean, like the LVMHs and the Kerings of the world, so diversified. And in Lulu's case, show me another one.
Oh yeah, Lululemon had down years.
Dude, that's the thing that everybody forgets. And I don't know if it was you that shared it, their year-over-year growth, and it was never this, and
9% in 2009. They grew 9%. Right. They closed stores at post 2008. Lululemon is the only consumer brand founded in the past 30 years that has a market cap above, let's call it $15 billion or whatever. Right. They stand alone, right?
They do. Yeah. So I just think that aspiring to be the one is bad math. That's how I like it. It's that's just shitty probability math. So I'd rather not do that. Right.
You know what's really just something that's been really on my mind lately with the layoffs and a lot of the public companies, right? On the tech side, mainly. It's just crazy to me. And this is that EPS and listening to investors and being focused on EPS. But Facebook, billions and billions and billions in profit, right? We're going to go do some bunch of layoffs. And clearly the street is telling them to do that. But that's how twisted the whole thing is. If I was a senior executive at Facebook, I would be embarrassed. I hired all these people, gave them a job, gave them a mission, and then, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, we made a mistake. We're just going to have to fire you all now. And listen, if the company is at risk or not making money and
Yes.
You got to fight to survive. You got to do what you got to do. And I also agree, and we've talked about this on in our chat, like cutting bottom performers regularly. That's
Great thing
just
to do.
good business hygiene. But man, like this is the perfect example of why being a public company is so hard, that all these big tech companies are just canning thousands and thousands of people who they hired because they thought there was a need. It's like, you're just admitting that you're dumb.
Right.
As a manager.
So Jason,
Well, okay, I guess, can I actually ask a question? Like, did they make a mistake? Or is the mistake in hiring people, or is the mistake in listening to the street?
Yeah, I think Matt has a great question there, because the street told them to hire a bunch of people because Google was hiring a bunch of people, right? And now the street's telling them to lay them off. And it is the symptom of just being public and having your will dictated by, someone who doesn't understand your business.
Can I give you guys like where this came from? Is I was talking to my head of retail sales this morning, and we were just like, and I see this with a lot of our friends. If you deal with, Sean, you're opening up wholesale this year, so you're dealing with buyers at like what are probably publicly traded big retailers, not name names, right? Those buyers, if you were to rewind the clock 20, 30 years, that job at one of those companies was a blend of like science and art, right? The buyer's job was to say like, what is going to really build a category in a store, or like like the art of retail, that trendy piece. Now buyers at these publicly traded retailers are 100% spreadsheet based. If it doesn't fit in the spreadsheet, they can't do it. They literally can't get their heads around it. They're also all like 23 years old because nobody wants the job anymore. Right. And it just got me thinking, I'm like, all of these big ass retailers are all publicly traded, and they're all wondering why they don't grow very fast or why they're unsexy. And I just wonder if it's actually the platform, which is public, that is limiting this, like the art, the thing, Sean, that you do, and Jason, like, and I think Danny does this really well at your company, which is just like looking into the future and saying like, we're going to go here.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I was public, I couldn't just demand the crazy shit that I'm trying to do right now. But I'm gonna derail the conversation real quick. I'm gonna go full populist mode. We should not feel bad about laying off tech employees. They get severance packages. Fuck all of them. Bed Bath and Beyond closing stores, not giving people any money. It's like, yeah. If you're talking about big retail, you're talking about layoffs. It's like, look, I do feel bad for all the tech employees losing their jobs. They're probably listening to the podcast more than than anybody else. So sorry I said that about you, but it's a cutthroat economy right now, and you have a lot of people with a lot of debt and bad businesses, and they get into this position where they have to continue to like. I mean, you guys all lived through 2008, right? And a bunch of bubbles. Companies doing share buybacks and paying out big dividends and then going bust the next quarter. It's like, that's public shit. It's like, It's like somebody there being like, hey, they're on the Titanic. They see the iceberg. They're like, we should pivot course. And it's like, but if we pivot course, we're going to miss earnings. And it's like, okay, that's the big ship of public gone wrong. Obviously there's great examples of great, beautiful public companies we've all made a lot of money owning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we can probably put a bow on this, but like, I think if you're listening to this pod right now, I'm two very smart people in consumer, gave you two different views of it. I think, Jason, you're going to be outvoted here. I think 2 against 1, man. I think being public for a consumer company is likely
that I'm right. So
and dude, like you can have your hold my beer moment and be the one that's like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I am the next Lulu. I would be so happy for you if that.
One thing you mentioned, Matt, though, we should definitely hit this in the future. Like this drive of D2C brands going into retail.
Yeah,
is really, really interesting. I think
I've got that as a topic for like.
We should probably hit that hard in the next one. But I actually have. I was just looking for it. I don't know what happened to it because I had a computer crash recently. But I have a little spreadsheet that I put together, like comparing D2C versus Amazon versus retail, and just really what the economics look like. Because I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, our growth is slowing in D2C, so where are we going to go? All right, well, we'll go and open up a new market, and it's retail. And, it may work for some people, but it's like, if your CAC is so high on D2C, why do you think retail is going to be better? That's just a preview. I think we should have that conversation.
I think we
because
should.
we're going to run out of time.
I agree. I think that the whole conversation around D2C, retail, everything, I think there's a massive misunderstanding of channel leverage. I actually don't even think people know what the fuck channel leverage is.
Yeah, Matt, both you guys are so fucking smart talking about this. And, this is the thing that gets clipped for short form. Ridge is, in the past 12 months, has added almost like 1,000 doors, right? So we've doubled our door count. We're able to do that because people know who we are, right? Because they've seen the ads. That's channel leverage right there. And
and it will make it like, and Jason, yes, we will dig into the retail D2C thing the next time. And we got to figure out who we can bring on to like really get into that, because there's some brilliant, and Mike is probably a great person because he's like, he crushes retail. Well, look, I think we're coming up on an hour. I like it. I liked the IPO, the public thing. I appreciate you guys sharing too what you're thinking about this year. I think that's really, listen, man, I'm like learning from you guys. So thank you for that. Is there anything that you guys want to add before we call this one and think about next one?
I don't know. I wanted to hear more of Sean's strategic priorities. I don't think we got enough of that.
Yeah,
I learn when I hear Sean. Whenever Sean talks, I learn.
Yeah,
I want to hear what Matt's got cooking. So we'll end it on strategic priorities. There's only two things I care about this year. It's legal shit and product expansion, basically. Like, I have 12 things we're working on this year. I'll share that with you guys privately. I think they're all very good. Rings is obviously one of the biggest things, and Rings is an 8-figure business for us this year. But things we've learned, we're under wholesale penetration, right? Wholesale last year was 5% of our revenue. A brand of our size, it should be 20% in our category. So like, we'll talk about that next week, right? And part of getting into wholesale is having categories that they buy, right? And you're going to see us add every year for the next 4 years, at least 1 to 2 product lines. So totally new verticals you wouldn't think about us getting into. And we're doing that because we have an awesome acquisition engine. People really like our shit. And the brands I look up to the most, Gucci, Tom Ford, Montblanc, they do everything. Like, if you want your entire bathroom, your entire bedroom, your entire outfit, Gucci, you totally could, right? That's best in class brand right there. That's the big differentiation between being a product company and a brand, right? Like, I would buy fucking HexClad sheets. That's how I know that's a brand, right? Being out of the kitchen. So, and then the legal shit, I'm suing a bunch of people, as everyone knows.
Dude, your legal bills have been hilarious to watch. The screenshot shared. I'm like, God, Sean,
I got another one,
animal.
fucking $225,000 in March. So, and that's because we're one of the most knocked off brands ever. I finally have the money to shut that down. So, if you sell knockoff Ridge wallets, bro, I'm gonna make your life hell.
That's good. You heard it here then. That's great, man. I think I love your differentiation between like, we're a good product and we're a good brand. And in HexClad right now, it's I thought of this actually this morning. Jason, somebody posted a picture of a hat. They were holding a fish, and there was a HexClad hat. And people were like, how do I get a HexClad hat? And I'm like, that motherfucker is on the way to being a real brand right there. It's a hat for pans. Like, that's awesome, man.
We're very fortunate because the kitchen is such a big category and we really don't have a ton of SKUs. Part of it is because we won't sell it if it's not innovative. We just won't do it. Like, we have very high standards. Danny's really leads most of the product development with our team. And, he's a tinkerer, and he's always like sending it back to the factory and be like, no, we got to fix this, that. And, but we've been better. I think in the first year that I was at HexClad, we launched like 1 new product. And then last year we launched probably 5. And this year we're doing 1 a month. And we do have a few big swings that we're talking about taking, but we're lucky. Like, what Sean has done with the rings and with the watch.
Yep.
I think these were big swings, and I'm really happy to hear that some of them are really working out. And I also know there's other really cool stuff in the pipeline. We definitely have plans outside the kitchen, but there's so much in the kitchen that we can be doing. So it's like, we just had this,
footwear. You got to do cooking shoes because
Crocs. A Crocs HexClad collab would be dope.
Sean loves footwear. Yeah.
Every chef I know uses freaking Crocs.
We have a great commercial grade product that we don't even try to sell to restaurants. We don't even try. We don't have enough to sell to them, really. And we actually used to think that our product was too expensive, but then we didn't even know. But Danny was in London and at RGR, Gordon's 3-star Michelin. They love the pans, like they use them there. We didn't even know. We didn't send it to them. They just they got them. They were using them. And so we have the whole, do we want to go in that direction? What do we want to do with apparel? I forget was it Sean who posted that the Yeti apparel. And I got a bunch of DMs and texts about that. Being like, what's going on with HexClad and apparel? And it's like, we actually have been thinking about it for a while. We just don't have the time.
Yeah. But it's a good is the enemy a great thing. Like, don't fuck around with apparel right now. Right. Like you guys have. So really, man, like, I don't like telling people what to do, but please don't do that. Like you guys, it's like your runway in so many things is so big. Like, just don't go screw around with that. But Sean, that's great. I'd love to see what the 12 are at some point. If you want to Slack those over, that'd be
I'll share them in chat. That's private. That's story time next year after I do them all. But Matt, end it, dude. What are you working on this year? We want to know,
dude. So this is our get shit together year. I got my priorities up right now. So recurring revenue. So you guys know this, when we sell a Lomi, we sell a subscription with it. Our goal is to 2.5 that business this year. Every one of those dollars is worth so much more than any other dollar in the business, right? So from an enterprise value, shareholder value, subscription is where it's at. And that business is just growing and growing and growing. We're going to actually transition the device. So Lomi 1.0 is in market. The 2.0 connected, very fancy one is coming in September. So I'm trying to sell down 1.0 inventory to have a nice lean into a launch to this data-driven device. And with that, we have a whole connected experience. I'm going to try and do smart home well. So an actual app that people fucking use for something in their home. And I'll save what that is. I'll show you guys a preview of what that looks like. And then channel leverage, man. Jason, we're starting Costco Roadshow this week.
I can't wait.
I'm stoked. It's it's the start, right? Where, and I'm actually I'm going, and I'm I want to sit here and I want to see this thing, and I want to tell these fucking people how they're doing it wrong when they're pitching it, and refine the whole thing. I'm just I love that. I want to just lean into it.
It's a great roadshow product, man.
It is, really, and well. It is. It does the TV. It's a good demo. It's a good product. And then multifamily real estate, man. That's such a big one for us, right? We're an easy financial win for people who own lots and lots of rentals and condos. We lower their waste bills. So those are our big ones. I got a lot of little shit, guys, but it's boring. Nobody wants to hear about it.
Dude, it's always more boring than people think. I mean, people always think CEOs are flying in fucking private jets, and if they are, dude, I don't know. I don't know those guys.
No.
Mostly, what I'm doing is typing. I spend a lot of time writing,
and talking. Yeah.
But fuck it.
Well, guys, this was great, man. Thanks for leaning in. That was a lot of fun. I love hearing both of your perspectives.